Hey everybody, at time of recording this video it won't have escaped your notice that Games Workshop is heading towards launching a new edition of Warhammer 40,000. 11th edition, which has a core box set that's very clearly inspired by the core box set from 2nd edition 40k. Now I'll be honest with you folks, that's the edition that I got into this hobby with, and so to me, well, that box set really is my happy place. I absolutely love stuff like this book that came inside it that had all the lore. I love the artwork on it, and the box set, the art in front of it, one over there, I absolutely love that. So in this video, I thought, well, what better time really to go and explore one of the miniatures in this set and paint one of the iconic monopose Space Marines that came in it. Now what we're going to do is paint it with some modern techniques and really lavish some attention on it too, so we're going to have a lot of fun with it. I really hope you enjoy it because I know I'm going to. Let's get to it. So here he is, the iconic monopose 2nd edition Space Marine. Now you can see I've got the miniature with various sub-assemblies going on here. I've kept the bolter and the backpack separate from the main body, and everything's been undercoated grey. Now those sub-assemblies aren't strictly necessary, but they do make some of the early stages a little bit easier. Of course the model is quite old, so if you're painting one of these as well, it's really great if you can have the parts separate, but if you can't, it's okay. You can still paint along with everything glued together. Now what we need to do is start out by establishing the red of the power armour, and here I'm definitely going to go for Blood Angels, just like on the cover of the box. And the red back at this time was brighter than it is now, so I'm just going to go straight in with some Demon Red for the base coat here. To apply it, I'm just going to go for a rough base coating brush, so I've got my good old medium base coat brush here from Citadel, but I'm very keen to make sure this is applied as smoothly as possible, so I am going to thin this down a little bit more than I normally do, and I'm going into this just expecting to have to apply 2 or 3 thin coats for it just to build it up. But it is important to avoid getting brush marks and things, so I just want to err on the side of caution. So with that thinned and ready, we can start applying it onto the Marine, and for the core assembly of the body just here, it's going to be the entire thing, but also mustn't forget to paint the red parts on the backpack too, and the hands that are holding the bolter as well. Here we have that bright red built up, so the next thing to do is start blocking in details that are going to be other colours. So really I'm looking at silvers and blacks here with a black, and after that we can start shading the red, because this way we'll know what parts are going to be black, and so we won't need to bother shading those. For this I'm going for a pitch black for a nice strong contrast against that bright red, so I'm going to use some Doom Death black, and to apply it I'm going for a size 1 brush here from Ardsopus, which is about the same size as a medium layer brush from Citadel. I see any sort of medium sized brush is ideal for this kind of thing, because what we need to do is accurately just start blocking these details, being careful not to catch the red where we want to keep the red. So with the paint thinned down and ready, we can start doing that, and Blood Angel of this era had black shoulder pad rims, so I'm absolutely definitely going to be doing that. So it's just a matter of neatly base coating in areas like this, just being cautious, making sure it doesn't drift over onto that red, so just there like that. Now in addition, I am going to be blocking out things that are going to be silver as well, and this is going to include small details such as the inside of the mouth, so I'm just going to very carefully get parts like this as well. I've now finished blocking all the black in. You can see there on those 2 parts, and if I just pick up the backpack, you can see I've done the same thing just there as well, making sure to get all the black and silver parts. Now with that done, we now know what parts are going to be remaining red, so what we can do is some shading on this, and rather than using a wash, I'm going to be doing this more manually by just neatly painting in a darker red into the recessed areas, and for this I picked out some Berserker Red. Now for this sort of shading, what you need is a brush that's just going to hold a really fine point, so I've gone down to a size 0 here, so a little bit smaller. Any sort of small brush will be absolutely fine though, so long as it has that point, and what we need to do is just thin the paint down so it's a little bit runny, about that sort of consistency there, and then we just need to neatly start painting this into the recesses of every panel that we can find. So for example, on the front of the Marine we've got his arm just here, we've got a recess just here. All we want to do is just paint it directly into the corner there like that, following it around as neatly as possible, and this is going to be true on all the red parts on the miniature. And with that, we've got some deep shading there on the red, and you can see I've also glued on his backpack at this stage, and that's because we've now really got into all those recesses that are around there, so we don't need to worry about the backpack being in the way anymore, so it's a good time to stick that on. Now the bolter, on the other hand, we do still need to keep separate because this covers up the design on the chest plate, and that's what we're going to start painting now. Now originally this would be done in yellow, but actually I really like it when it's gold, so again I want to bring a bit more of a modern flair here. So I'm going to base coat it using a nice rich gold. I've got some Dragon's Gold for this, and to apply it I'm going to stick to my size 0 brush for lots of accuracy. Now the little wing design that's on the side of the bolter is going to get painted in the same way at the same time, but for this first stage we just got to base coat these parts. So with the paint thinned and under control, it's just a matter of picking them out, and you can see how easy it is to do this now without the bolter in the way. It's just a matter of blocking in the entire design at this stage. Now the gold's blocked in, we can do some shading on it, and here we want to go for that really nice warm gold appearance, so going for some sort of chestnutty brown wash will be perfect. For that reason I picked out some flesh wash, and to apply it I'm going to stick to the size 0 brush, and it's just a matter of loading up a small amount of this on the brush, and then painting it directly over the top of the gold. So for example, on the design on the chest just here, so just going to wash it straight over the top like this. And once that's painted on there, we just need to let the wash dry, and whilst it's drying, you might be interested to learn that we have created a game studio. This is Death Reaper Games, and the first game launched from it is going to be Lords and Legends. Now we're going to be revealing more about this game over the coming weeks, but if you're interested, be sure to go over to deathreapergames.com and sign up to the newsletter to make sure you don't miss any of the latest announcements and see all the exclusive reveals, but also be sure to check out our Death Reaper Games social media as well. We've also got some really exciting stuff for Lords and Legends coming up on the channel too, so be sure to keep an eye out. And once the wash is dry, it's then time to glue the bolter into place, and you can see why we kept it separate, because it's so close to the chest it's actually quite difficult to get to that design whilst it's in the way. But now it's base coated and washed, we don't have to worry, because all we need to do is highlight the bits that we can see later on. So finally, the miniature is in one piece. Now with that done, we're going to move on to another metallic now, because it's time to base coat in all the silver. For this I'm going to use some Cerakote silver, and once that's done we can then pick out the shells in the bolter magazine, and here I want to go for a bronze. So I'm going to use some Spartan Bronze. Now once that's completed we can wash these areas as well, and this time we'll need a black wash. So for this I'm going to use some Oblivion black wash. We'll start out with the base coat of silver, and here I'm using Cerakote silver applied with the size 0 brush again, and these details are going to be scattered across the miniature, but one part I'm very specifically not going to be base coating at this stage is going to be the mouth grill, and that's just because I'm going to go straight to highlighting that with silver later on, just to get a really strong contrast to make it look a little bit like how the older miniatures did. But for the rest of it, what we need to do is base coat these parts. So for example, on the backpack we've got all the cables and things around here. Just going to base coat all this in, just being really careful whenever we get close to parts that need to remain black, or the red armour just around it. Once all that silver's been blocked in, the next thing to do is pick out the shells in the bolter just here. For this I'm using some Spartan Bronze, still being applied using the size 0 brush. And now that's done, we can apply a black wash over both these colours at the same time. So I'm using Oblivion black wash, and to apply it I've got my size 1 brush. I'm just going to make sure to be careful to keep it off the surrounding colours and only on the silver and the bronze. And there we go, that wash is dry as well. So the next thing to paint is going to be the little skull on his forehead. And back in the day, these will be painted in bone colours, so that's what I'm going to be doing here as well. I'm going to start out with a base coat of Dragon Fang, and then for the wash, I'm going to use just a little bit of Battle Mud wash. So a dark brown wash for that one. But we'll start out with some Dragon Fang for the base coat, and to apply it, I've gone to my size 0 brush here, and we just need a very small amount of this thinned down and ready, and then it's just a matter of neatly picking this out. So I'm just going to brace my hands to be as steady as possible, just carefully go in, and just base coat the whole thing. And now that's blocked in, we can apply a wash over the top. So I've got some Battle Mud wash, and I'm just going to neatly apply it, still using the size 0 brush. And now that's done, we've pretty much got all our colours blocked in. So what we'll do is start doing a bit of detail work and a little bit more shading before moving into highlighting the miniature. And that little bit of detail I'm talking about now is to add the silver into the mouth grill. So all I'm going to do is just introduce a little bit of Cerakote silver onto the raised up parts of it, leaving the black paint we put in earlier in the recesses for the definition. So what we need to do is go for a small brush for this one, and I'm going for a size 00 now, and this is about the same sort of size as a small airbrush from Citadel. It's a nice small brush to give lots of control. I just need to get a little bit of that silver thinned down, and crucially just going to make sure I don't have much on the brush so it doesn't go out of control, because what we need to do is just be braced as steady as possible and just gently go in and just allow the bristles to pick out the raised texture of the mouth grill. So it almost, well, quite like dry brushing, but very close to the same general procedure of just lightly brushing across it like this, just to pick out the raised part of the detail. And now that's done, we've got that old school appearance there on the mouth grill, where black is dominant, but a little bit of silver is showing through. And with that done, we can now move on to the next thing, which is going to be to do a little bit of soft shading on the red armour to give it a bit more depth. Now to do this, I've actually been working towards using the full triad system of red here with the two thin coats paints. And I used the lightest of the three, which was Demon Red, to be the main colour, and I've used the darkest of the three as well, which was Berserker Red, for the deepest shading. So in the middle, we've also got Sanguine Scarlet that's designed to bridge the gap between the two of them, and so I'm going to use that now for that purpose. And I'm going to be glazing it onto the armour, focusing in particular areas to introduce that sort of soft shadow in those parts. Now to do this, you want to go for a medium or small to medium kind of brush. I'm going to use my size 0 for this one, but anything like this will be absolutely fine. And what we need to do is get the paint heavily thinned down. Now having a wet palette for this really helps out because you can keep the paint at the sweet spot for longer. What you need is a good amount of water and a little bit of the paint poured into it to create a very thin version of it. And it needs to be quite runny like this because the goal is to apply it thinly with multiple coats to gradually build up the intensity of it by each successive layer that we add and really focusing that colour so we can put it exactly where we want it to be. Now you can test this on your palette by just removing the excess paint off your brush and then just having a go at painting it thinly onto the paper. And right now that is much too strong there. You see it's quite bold. So what we need to do is add some more water to that. So there we go. Then we'll try again, remove the excess, try painting onto the paper. Still a little bit too strong there, so let's do a bit more water, mix that in there like that. Remove the excess and then have a go. And that's more like it. That's the kind of thing we're looking for, you see. Very subtle, very thin, so this way we can add another coat on top of that and build it up where we want it. So what we need to do now that we've got that established just there is load up the brush, then get some tissue, use it just to quickly remove the excess off like that, and at this point you now have the correct amount of paint on your brush and you're ready to go. So what we're looking for are the undersides of armour panels and, well, the bottoms of armour panels as well. And what we need to do is just start brushing the colour on it like this in those areas. Now it'll be a very thin coat, and the first pass you won't really see anything happening. Again, down the bottom of the hand just there, I'll do the same thing, just bring it down. And you can see what I'm always doing is pulling the paint downwards towards where I want it to be the strongest, because of the surface tension of the water, where the brush leaves the miniature is where most of the paint is going to be deposited. So you always want to go down to where you want it to be darkest, there like that. Now, because it's so thin, it'll dry quickly, meaning you can soon go in for a second coat like this. And, well, what we do is gradually go further and further down towards where it needs to be the darkest. And over about 6 or 7 coats, you'll find suddenly that dark red starts showing in those areas and gives you a nice smooth gradient on these panels. And there we go. The result of applying that glazing there onto the miniature just gives a little bit more depth onto that red power armor. So now that's done, we can move on to highlighting it. And for this, we want a brighter shade of red than where we started. So I'm going to be using some Centurion Red for this. Now to apply this sort of thing for an edge highlight on Space Marine power armor like this, it's essentially you have a brush that just holds a really fine point. So I'm going to use my size 0 again because it is holding a really good point here. So I'm quite happy with this. You can of course go for a smaller brush if you want to, but that precision is the key thing. And also thin the paint down to the correct consistency is key as well. What you need to do is just gradually introduce water into your paint on your palette and just test how smooth it is because you're looking for it to flow with no resistance. So that sort of smoothness is what we're aiming for there. Now once you've got it to that point, just make sure you remove the excess off your brush by just twisting the brush cells like that to bring them to a nice point, because now we have the control to follow all the sharp edges of the power armor. So we're looking for corners such as this one here on the elbow joint, where we just want to line up with the edge of the panel and just paint a line of this color, following that edge as neatly and as closely as possible. So just in that motion there like that. Now personally I find this downward motion for the application really helps out with the precision of it, so what I do is just turn the miniature to make sure I'm always painting in this way when I'm applying the highlight like this, which means sometimes even turning the model upside down, but it just gives that control as you go. Now there are occasions where you can actually use the side of the brush instead because some of the edges might be standing out enough to allow you to do so. Typically areas like the backs of the legs allow you to do this down near the feet. So here for example we can use the side of the brush and just skim along that edge. But when you're doing this, just make sure you apply it with a smooth motion like this to ensure that highlight is nice and sharp as you go. Once that's done, all those edges will be standing out nicely, so we can now take it a little bit further with a second finer edge highlight just to really help that red pop. And here we need to move into an orange to get a nice bright appearance. So for this, I'm going to use some orange flare. Now to apply it, it's going to be more or less the same kind of technique, so I'm going for the same brush with the size 0 once more, but we just need to be a little bit more selective and precise as to what parts exactly we're picking out. Here we're looking for the sharpest edges and angles that would catch the light the most. So to do that, make sure you set the paint up just like before, and then we can start looking for them. And it's going to be things such as on his hand here, on that armour on the back of it. See, we've got a sharp corner towards the top just here. What we want to do is just add a little flick of this colour on that corner right there going down, and then on this corner as well, just to push this a little bit further. So it's always going to be small areas like this where lines intersect and where the highlight really goes over the top of panels, such as this back of the wrist just there as well. But especially on the helmet, we need to make sure we do this, and it's going to be on areas such as the top of the mouth just here. And with that, the red plates of his power armor are now completed, so we can move on to highlighting the black details. And here I'm going to go for two subtle different tones for the different materials, because we've got black armor and also black leather as well. For the armor, I'm going to go for a sort of bluish grey colour and use some Faust blue here, whereas for the leather parts, I'm going to go for some dungeon stone grey instead. Now, once that's done, to really finish these details off, we're going to add a fine highlight with a light grey, and I'm going to use some Carcharodon grey here, and we can use this for both of them. But we'll start out with some Faust blue, and to apply this, I'm just going to go for the same brush again. So that's size 0 once more, and this is going to be applied in just the same way as what we did on the red, and that we're looking for a sharp edge highlight on all the black armoured details, and this will include the casing of the bolter. So we're looking to do an edge highlight here, and when it comes to the bolter, it is quite easy to use the side of the brush to skim along those edges to get a sharp highlight going along there like that. But when it comes to the parts that are a little bit more tricky to get to, such as the knee pads, in this case it's back to the tip of the brush, and we just want to follow the edge all the way around. For the remaining black details, we can then move on to a dark grey for the highlight. So here I'm using some Dungeon Stone Grey, and this is going to be for leather details, such as the scabbard of his combat knife just there, but also we can use this for the joints and the pipes in the armour. When it comes to joints, we're looking at these ones, such as on the backs of the legs just down here. Just need to pick up the raised parts of the ridges. And for the pipes, I'm talking about the ones that are on the sides of the helmet, just around here. And now that's done, to finish off all the areas of black, we can add a fine highlight of a light grey. So for this one, I'm using some Carcharodon grey, and the process is just the same as what we did on the red, where we're looking for the sharpest edges and corners that really stand out, and just want to add a very gentle application of this colour to those sharpest parts. And now the black is complete too, and the miniature is well on the way to being finished. We've just got some smaller details to highlight at this stage, and the first of these is going to be that bone colour that appears in the skull on the helmet. Now to do this, I'm going to start out by highlighting it with a bone colour a little bit lighter than where we started. So here I'm using Skeleton Legion, and then we can go even further for a final highlight. For this, I'm going to use a little bit of Vampire Fang. Once that's done, we can then move on to the metallics, and for the silver, I'm going to use some Mithril Blade. Then for the gold, I'm going to go for some Glistening Gold. But first of all, I'm going to use some Skeleton Legion, and to apply this one, I'm just going to stick to the same brush. So it's my size 0 once more. And with this, just need a small amount thinned down and under control, and then we can start picking out the raised up details and edges of the skull up here. And when it comes to the shape here, it is quite a smooth rounded skull, but all the same, we should just follow the top of it, just with a line running across there. Then we can pick out a line going around the eyes, so just very carefully picked out there, and then the teeth as well. And then next up, we can move on to a lighter shade of bone. So here I've got Vampire Fang, and this is just going to be a fine highlight on the sharpest features, so around the eyes, on top of the forehead, and the teeth too. Next up, it's time to highlight the metallics, and we'll start out with the silver. For this, I'm using some Mithril Blade, and this is going to be an edge highlight applied like how we did on the red and the black. So looking for all sharp edges and angles, and gently following each one. And now all that silver's been highlighted, we can do the same thing on the gold. And for this, I'm using some Glistening Gold, still being applied to the size 0 brush, because the application is just the same as what we did on the silver. Again, looking for edges and angles and gently picking them out, being especially careful when we go down to the chest design just here. And now that's done, this Space Marine is well on the way to completion, and we're at a point where we're going to be painting in some smaller details. Now, having a red helmet means that this guy, the Blood Angels chapter, is going to be a tactical Marine, and so I decided what I'd do is make him of the 4th squad, so a tactical squad in the 2nd company, and the reason is because I like the colour combination that this provides. Now, I do have transfers for the 2nd company marking, which is a yellow blood drop, but I don't have one for the 4th tactical squad, which is a red blood drop on a black field on the right knee. Now, that's why I painted the knee black so far, and so what we now need to do is just paint that blood drop on the top. And to do this, I'm going to do so with some Sanguine Scarlet first of all, then I'm going to highlight it with a touch of Demon Red. But we'll start out with some Sanguine Scarlet, and to do this, you just want, again, a brush that holds a fine point. So I'm just going to use my size 0 brush once again. All we need to do is get some of this thin down so it's a little bit inky, and then just start applying this pattern in the middle of the knee. Now, the way to do this sort of thing, once you've got that inkiness, is to line the miniature up so you're looking straight at it, and making sure that the drop is going to be vertical on the orientation of the armour plate. So that means turning him slightly like this. And to do it, we'll start with a vertical line right in the middle of the knee, just there like that, and then start widening that out towards the bottom. So just there on that side, and then just there on that side, and then all we need to do is round off the bottom down there. If you need to make any adjustments, just switch back to your black to tidy things up, and then when you're ready you can add a highlight. For this you want a brighter red, so now I'm using some Demon Red, and all we need to do is add a few lines of this going down from the tip of the drop at the very top, so just there to help it stand out a bit more. And that's the squad marking done, so now all we've got to do is paint in the eye lenses, and for this I'm going to go for the gem effect, so I'm going to start out with a dark green. Here I've picked out some wyvern green, and then we'll start getting brighter, so I'm going to use some ethereal green, followed by a touch of craven yellow, and then to finish off the glassy effect we need a dot of some white star, just for that specular highlight. But first of all we need to get things going with a dark green, so I'm using wyvern green here, and to apply it I'm just going to go for the same brush once more. All we've got to do is base coat the lenses at this stage. So to do this, make sure the paint's thinned down, but also definitely make sure it's under control. You don't need a lot in your brush here. Then brace your hands to be as steady as possible and approach each lens from the side like this. All you want to do is just introduce that colour into the recessed area very gently there, like that. Now that's done, we can move on to a bright green, and here I've got some ethereal green, and because this area is so small I have switched to my size 00 brush to apply this one, and what we need to do is just add a very small line of this towards the front of each eye lens, so just running along the bottom around about there. Next up we need to add a tiny amount of a pale yellow. So here I've got some craven yellow still being applied with the size 00 brush, and this one's just going to be a very small line right at the front of each eye lens. And then finally, to complete the effect we just need a pure white. So now I've got some white star, and with this all we need to do is add a tiny dot at the back of each lens. And with that, the painting is now complete, and it's time to apply the transfers onto this Space Marine, and then it's time to base him. Now, honestly, when it comes to basing, I did originally plan to base him in that classic Goblin Green style sandy base. But now we've got to this point, because I've been painting him in a more modern style, I think actually it'd be really cool to base him in a modern style as well. So what I'm going to do instead is do the Armageddon base method here, because it's going to suit the storyline from the second edition box set. So I'm going to apply the transfers and do the base like that, and at that point, he's going to be complete. And with the base now fully painted, this tactical Space Marine of the Blood Angels chapter is complete and ready to go to war against the Orcs on Armageddon. So this has been a really fun experience because, as I said in the intro, I absolutely love this era of Warhammer 40,000 and these miniatures especially. And in fact, a Space Marine like this is the very first Space Marine I ever saw when I first encountered this hobby way back when. Now, if you were like me, a kid back then, and it's something that really appeals to you, then I definitely recommend looking for one of these secondhand, like on eBay or something like that, because painting them is a really fun experience, because the detail level is quite different to what you get now. Things are certainly softer and a bit more rounded, so painting in some ways is a bit more challenging, but because there's less detail on there, finishing the miniature is actually quicker as well, so it's a really fun exercise. And better than that, it's a really fun trip down memory lane as well. So I hope this has perked your interest, and also I hope you pick some new skills up from it. So we'll see you again very soon.